Today, I'm going to teach you guys how to drift as a beginner. As you probably saw in that clip, it looks like I know what I'm doing, but believe me, that was only one good clip, an entire lot session. I can't do those consistently yet, where I'd say I could bust them out at any point in time and get a few circles going. So that's why I consider myself a beginner. If you think it looks good, you know, keep in mind it's only one good clip, and if you think it looks crap, then that's why we're talking about this as a beginner. And since I'm still pretty fresh, I figure this is a great time to recap some of the useful tips and like hidden tricks that kind of don't get unless you kind of figure out through trial and error. So it's still fresh in my mind, and I'm gonna kind of showcase what I did and go through the learning process to help you guys out in the beginning stages here. And this is mainly gonna be centered on the Harley, but I'm gonna take the exact same learning progression and just do the same thing on the F4i. So it's pretty much the same no matter what bike you're on, but you'll just have to make some minor adjustments based on the bike itself. So the first thing, we're gonna talk about bike setup. Major thing is always PSI. Everybody always talks about PSI. Big thing with the Harley is if you have too much PSI, sometimes you can't wheelie. If you have too little, then you can't drift well enough. But I run 30 to 32 PSI, and I don't have any issues clutching up, nor do I have any issues breaking it loose. And I run takeoffs. Like, I don't know if you can see how cracked this sidewall is. Like, this is I think this is an 11-year-old tire. So PSI, 30 to 32 on here. If you're looking at a sport bike, I like to run 40 to 42 on the F4i, and I leave that for everything. I don't adjust it. It's great for wheelies. It's great for spinning the tire loose. Now, the other thing is tire width. Because I run takeoffs, it's kind of just get what you can get. I've run all three tire widths, a 150, a 140, and a 130. I started on the 150. That clip that you saw in the beginning was on a 140, and now I'm on a 130. A 130 is going to be the skinniest tire, and from what I've practiced today, it just breaks free like nothing. So this might be the easiest to drift, but I think a 140 is a pretty good middle ground for learning. It doesn't kick out as fast as the 130 does. So 140 to 130, 150, you know, you can get away with all three, but I think the 140 is a great middle ground, and then you should just be able to drift with any tire after that. First thing that I would do, and what I did, was watch the Cruzy Originals How to Drift video for the Harley. He broke it down in a pretty good sequence that helped me out. So watch that first, you'll get an idea, and then hopefully this video kind of fills in some of the little tiny nuances that you don't get until you actually start trying it, and hopefully you don't have to just kind of guess when you go into it. So watch that video. First thing they teach is doing your skids. If you can't do the skids, you shouldn't even be trying to drift in the first place. You should be really comfortable locking up the rear wheel and flicking it each way. I mainly go to the left. That's what's most comfortable for me, but obviously I'm going to try to drift both ways so I can link figure eights and all that. Make sure you go both ways, keep the tire nice and even. For now, I think it's fine to just start with whichever way is most comfortable. You don't have to rush it and try and go both ways immediately. So the progression sequence was kind of, I did my skids, then I did my rolling burnouts, which are just your normal standing up over the tank rolling burnouts like this, and then I transfer them to sitting, so you can go rolling standing and then sit down in the seat, or you can start from a dead stop like this and then swing circles using front brake. And that I can do both ways. Obviously my left is a little more comfortable. With the front brake, it gives you a lot of control, so it's easier to go both ways or try it your uncomfortable way, and you have the security of the front brake. Rolling burnout standing, go seated, because when you're seated, you got your foot down, you're up on the tank like this, and you kind of, when you're swinging that circle and you're dragging that foot, you kind of have an idea of what it's going to feel like in a drift. But because you have front brake, it's not as wild and out of control as you would think. So this gives you that security, but you can still find a way to get a feel for how that drift is going to feel. So now that you've practiced your skids, you got your rolling burnouts down, you feel comfortable at that. Now we can go to the next step of that Cruzy Originals video, and it's basically a 180 like J-turn. You'll just start from a dead stop like this, and you're gonna sit up all the way on the tank, like as far forward as you can go. As you can see, I got a lot of space here, and you put your foot here. You don't want to be using any rear brake. I kind of keep it covered because if I feel like it's out of control, you can pull the clutch in and lock the rear and you'll just like slide. But if you kind of slowly brake, it'll catch and kind of high side you. So I use it as a sense of security, because you can always, you know, if you fail to drift, you can always pull the clutch in and lock it and skid again and reinitiate. But cover it, but don't use it. So you're sitting up front, you're gonna put all your weight on this left leg, you're gonna lean the bike. You don't need much. You just want to get it up on the sidewall a little bit so it breaks free easier. This is probably pretty exaggerated. You really don't need much. Kind of like this. And the big thing is you have the wheel turned a little bit. This is gonna choose which direction you go. So if you're going to the left, I like to keep it turned to the left initially, and you know, you have your clutch in, you're in gear, you got all your weight on your leg, you're sitting kind of off the seat initially, because the less weight you have in the rear, the easier it's going to break free. You're up, you're going to give it some gas, and then dump the clutch, and you want to look whichever direction you want to go. So if you're going left, you already want to be looking this way, and then as you break it free, you're going to have that wheel turn like this, but the back end's going to kick out, and then once you kind of hook your circle, naturally it's going to kind of counter steer a little bit, but the more you counter steer, the wider the circle will be, and you'll end up just going straight 180, which is what you want. If you keep it tight and turned like this, see how the wheel is turned already to the left? When it breaks free, this is going to move, and it's just going to want to go that direction, and you'll stay in a super tight circle, and you'll probably low side. The wheel kind of dictates where you want to go on the initiation, so naturally when you lean this way, it kind of makes sense that it just wants to tilt that way too. So when you break it free, you know, you'll counter steer it, and that'll keep it open and wide. So you just want to make a J. So if you can follow that and go that way, that's your J turn. That's the first thing. Basically, that'll help you get used to the initiation and breaking the back end loose. And I pretty much did that until I was able to consistently just break it free. And over time, I kind of just ended up starting to do circles on my own unintentionally. It was kind of, I think I left the wheel turned a little bit, and you know, that's how it ended up going. So the most important part when you are initiating the drift is really the clutch dump. It's not so much the throttle. Basically, if you don't dump the clutch at the right time or fast enough, and you really just, you know, dumping it, like release it, you're not slipping it or sliding it out slow. If you go slow, it ain't gonna work. So you get it, give it some gas, and you're just dumping it like that. That is the most important part. That's what will break the back end free. It's not so much the gas. The gas is more when you're in it. That's how you modulate it. If you're leaned over and you dump that clutch, it will break free. If you fail, you know, one of two things will happen. You'll either just give it gas, go to, you know, let the clutch out, and you just hear a bunch of noise. The bike doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't break free, kind of rolls forward. Or you give it too much gas and you low side, like right in the beginning, it just slides out and you kind of tip over. Those are really the only two things that can happen. That's why I like trying it on the Harley first, because this bike really won't wheelie unless I purposely make it wheelie. Like, I really have to bounce it up to get it to go. I don't think I've had a single time trying to learn to drift where the front wheels come off the ground because it didn't break free in the back end. On the sport bike, it's a little different. That's why I haven't tried it on that bike yet, because it does scare me a little bit, because if it hooks, it will come up. The Harley, you really only have to worry about your side to side, not this. The sport bike, you know, you worry about it sliding, it gripping and high siding, or it gripping and flipping, you know, the front end up. That's why I chose to learn on this bike first. So once the bike breaks loose in the back end, a lot of the times when I was starting, you know, I initiated it, I started having it swing out, but I got scared, I didn't commit, and I let off the throttle. That will cause the rear tire to hook up again, and that will toss you out. That'll high side you. Never close the throttle completely. It's like a wheelie. When you give it some gas, you dump the clutch, and then you kind of roll off, but you're not completely rolled off. It's the same thing with drifting. You give it gas, you dump it, and then you roll off a little bit, and then, you know, you're just modulating the throttle based on how the bike is moving. So you're steering with throttle, your hips, the lean angle. The less lean angle you have, the more throttle you need. The more lean angle you have, the less throttle you need. Get comfortable doing those 180s. Make sure you're confident you can kind of do them each time. And then when you want to do a complete circle, it might just happen naturally, but really the only difference is you leave the front wheel turned in a little bit longer until it starts going in a circle. Then you'll figure out how to modulate it and steer it using your throttle, using your body position. You do counter steer a little bit too. You will find yourself moving the bars, and pretty much once you start going, you know, you'll feel it out. As long as you don't completely cut off the throttle and close it, it's not going to grip up like you think. And to exit, the drift, you pretty much just start to roll off throttle a little bit, counter steer it, and it'll open up, it'll widen out, and it'll naturally just kind of do its thing. My fear was exiting the drift like it's just going to grip up and throw you, but it really doesn't. The only time it will is if you cut that throttle. So don't do that. Just kind of roll off and come out slow, come out pinned, whatever. You'll feel it. As long as you don't cut it, it ain't going to grip the way you think it is. And pretty much the rest of the progression is really just coming in, skidding, stopping, breaking it loose, drifting, and then combining those steps together, making it smoother. So you come in on the skid, and you dump the clutch, and you start drifting all in one smooth motion. That's basically the rest of the progression. But the way I did it was I broke it down into steps. You know, you break it loose, do your J, do your circle, skid, circle, and then skid and drift, right? That's how I broke it down. And some final tips here, you know, when you're initiating, like I said, you kind of have it leaned over, you got your weight on this leg, and you're up off the bike. But once it breaks free, don't leave the weight on this leg. Sit down in the seat, but up front, because if you leave this weight on your leg, you're kind of going to get hurt because you're just dragging your entire body weight and the bike's weight on your leg. You're just getting off the seat initially to let the bike break loose, and then once you dump that clutch, boom, sit down, get all your weight on that seat right in front. Like, this leg should just be lightly scraping across the ground. You shouldn't have heavy pressure on it. When you come in, kind of lean forward a little bit. Get your arms bent. Lean forward, come in with confidence. My best drifts were when I came in confident, like came in, skidded, I was ready, I was leaned forward, dumping the clutch, like I was ready to handle this bike, manhandle this bike. That's what you want to do. You don't want to just kind of come in and give it gas, dump the clutch, and then just react to what the bike's doing. Be proactive, like know, like, hey, I'm coming in this, I'm dumping it, like this is what I'm gonna do, this is how I'm gonna handle this thing. Have some confidence with it. And you'll get your best drifts when you're strong on the bike, confident, and not like just dumping it and, you know, seeing what's going to happen. Like, that's when things don't go well. Like I said earlier, dumping the clutch is the most important part in getting the bike to break free. Not so much the throttle. You know, you got your more lean angle, less throttle, less lean angle, more throttle. So when you're doing Larry's, you're actually standing the bike up more and having it pinned. And you'll kind of naturally feel that, especially if you do crazy layers with front brake. So you're doing those rolling burnout circles seated, and if you lean more to the right and stand it up more, that's when you can pin it on limiter. If you try and pin it on limiter when it's leaned over, it's just going to want to slide out. Once you're in the drift, you know, you're controlling the type of drift with the amount of throttle and your body position, and that's pretty much all you need to learn how to drift as a beginner.